Have you ever felt that unsettling grip of fear or maybe anxiety just, tightening its
Oh,
hold?
absolutely.
Not just in your chest, but it feels like it constricts your whole perspective sometimes.
Yeah, it really does.
But that moment when the path ahead just becomes completely opaque and your mind, almost against your will, starts racing, building these elaborate stories of every possible disaster.
It's such a universal experience, isn't it? That spiraling thought process, the way it convinces you you've foreseen every single dead end. It's a powerful architect of dread inside us.
Exactly. Maybe it's triggered by, I don't know, a huge financial decision that's looming or a sudden health scare, maybe for you or someone you
For
love.
even just the constant flood of global news, right? It can feel overwhelming.
It really can. And in those moments, it's so easy to feel completely adrift in this sea of what ifs, isn't it? Just lost.
You've all been there,
Yeah.
navigated those waters,
Yeah.
and that feeling, that almost urge to just give in to the uncertainty, let it wash over you. Well, it can be incredibly paralyzing.
It really can stop you cold.
Yeah, it stops you from moving forward towards what you actually want or maybe what you feel called to do. You get locked in this kind of stasis. It prevents those victories we secretly hope for.
It truly does. Well, today on the deep dive, we're actually embarking on a pretty profound journey, I think. We're looking into that intense human experience, the fundamental, almost adversarial interplay between faith and fear.
It's a core tension, really, shaped human existence for, well, millennia.
And we're definitely not just skimming the surface here. We want to dive deep into some ancient wisdom, specifically drawing insights from the King James Bible to really unpack what these concepts mean for us.
Yeah, unpack faith and fear, but crucially, look at the transformative outcomes, the victories, and maybe even unexpected gains that can arise when we actively choose one over the other.
Exactly. Our mission for this deep dive is really to distill the reasons why faith is so consistently presented in these texts as the ultimate form of trust in a higher power.
A trust that's not just helpful, but it's presented as essential, right? Especially when our human understanding hits its limits,
Which, let's be honest, is pretty often.
almost always. And that limitation is a key insight itself. And conversely, we'll explore why fear shows up as such a potent deterrent, like a clear sign of misplaced trust.
Yeah, a signal maybe that we're relying on ourselves, our own finite abilities, or, worldly assurances that shift like Sam instead of something infinitely bigger, more dependable.
It's a constant battle, isn't it? These two forces, faith and fear, always vying for our attention, our allegiance. It's like they're locked in this perpetual dance.
They really are. And I think we'll uncover some surprising truths about how these ancient texts shed light on that interaction. And maybe most importantly, how they offer a kind of roadmap for moving from a state dominated by fear to one of deep, abiding faith.
And that shift, that's where the real transformation happens, right? That's what allows us to overcome the paralysis fear brings.
Exactly. Leading to those unforeseen breakthroughs, that inner fortitude and genuine triumphs in our lives, those unexpected gains.
But it's important to stress, this isn't about just ignoring reality, pretending dangers don't exist. That would be reckless.
No, not at all. My sense is it's far more about a radical shift in perspective, wouldn't you say? A different way to navigate the uncertainty.
Yeah, turning it from something you just have to grit your teeth and endure into, well, maybe an unexpected opportunity for real growth, spiritual resilience.
And for those positive outcomes we talked about.
Precisely. It's a recalibration of where you place your ultimate reliance. And that act itself, that recalibration, it liberates new possibilities. It unlocks those unanticipated benefits. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Okay. So as we started really immersing ourselves in these texts, something truly remarkable just kept jumping out, almost like this constant drumbeat echoing through the entire narrative. It wasn't just a casual suggestion.
You absolutely cannot miss it. It's this repeated, emphatic, almost foundational command. Fear not.
That exact phrase, fear not, it just echoes throughout the King James Bible with such striking frequency. Its centrality becomes completely undeniable. You just can't overlook it.
No, you can't.
But like you said earlier, this isn't about being reckless or blindly ignoring genuine danger. So what does its prevalence truly point to? Why repeat it so often?
Yeah, you've hit the core of it. The sheer prevalence, the repetition, it isn't just a comforting phrase said over and over for effect.
Yeah.
Its constancy strongly suggests that fear is understood as, well, maybe a natural, even ingrained human inclination.
Like a default setting?
Almost, yeah.
Yeah.
An instinctive response that we constantly need to address, and more importantly, to actively overcome, not just in our spiritual lives, but psychologically too.
So the repetition underscores that conquering fear is actually a foundational victory, maybe the first step towards a fuller life.
That's how it feels. It's like the texts acknowledge our inherent tendency towards fear. It's as if they recognize our default, biologically, emotionally, might be self-preservation through fear.
And faith, then, is presented as something else entirely.
Exactly. Faith is presented as this radical rewiring, almost like a divine override of that deep impulse. And maybe that divine override itself is the very first victory, the one that enables all the others that follow. It shifts our whole internal landscape.
A divine override. I like that phrasing. And it's not about denying threats exist, right? Or pretending things aren't difficult.
Not at all. It's acknowledging them, certainly. But simultaneously, these texts emphasize God's consistent presence, his immense power, and his unwavering promises as the ultimate sources of comfort and courage.
And that reassurance, that's what enables us to move forward. That's what leads to those unanticipated benefits like strength and perseverance.
Ultimate sources, that's the key phrase. And the repetition just underscores this isn't the battle you win once and you're done.
Right. It's an ongoing process.
A continuous cultivation of trust. It's a central message, really crucial for anyone trying to live a life of, well, profound reliance, where resilience is built and sustained through that divine connection.
That makes so much sense. It's like a parent constantly reassuring a child,
Mhm.
knowing the child's natural tendency is to be afraid of the dark or loud noises or the unknown. That constant refrain, don't be afraid.
Exactly. And this constant repetition of fear not suggests it's truly foundational. A core battleground in the human experience. We're talking hundreds of instances, right, across different books, different contexts.
It's everywhere.
This constant pulling back to trust, it's like a perpetual invitation to achieve genuine triumph over our fears, freeing us from their stifling grip.
That's right. Constantly pulling us back to this core truth. It really tells us something about ourselves, doesn't it? About our human tendency to default to anxiety when things get tough or unclear, and how choosing faith allows us to break free from that default, opening us up to possibilities, to gains we might otherwise miss entirely.
It certainly seems to highlight that propensity within us. So, okay, given this pervasive command, fear not, where does the actual comfort come from? The tangible peace. According to these sources, it seems very directly tied to a divine source, not just human wisdom.
Absolutely. It's presented as far more than just, helpful advice from wise people or philosophical thoughts. These aren't just suggestions from friends. They feel like direct, powerful reassurances.
Often presented as coming straight from God himself or through Jesus, offering a tangible comfort that translates into real-world serenity and, well, profound resilience.
Yeah. The comfort offered is fundamentally rooted in God's direct, unwavering assurance of his presence and his aid. Let's look at one of the real cornerstone verses here, Isaiah 41:7. It just encapsulates this divine guarantee so powerfully. It's like a blueprint for inner stability, for victory over dismay.
I mean, please read it. It's so rich.
Okay. Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness.
Wow. There's just so much packed into that single verse. If you break it down, you see this multi-layered promise.
Right. I am with thee. That speaks directly to an omnipresent, almost tangible presence. You're never truly alone.
And the radical takeaway there isn't just that God is with you, but that his presence actually transforms the very nature of the threat itself. It can turn what feels like an insurmountable obstacle into an opportunity for, well, divine demonstration, leading to true liberation from fear. That presence is a profound internal benefit.
That's a huge distinction, knowing you're never truly alone, no matter how isolating things feel. That presence becomes this constant wellspring of strength, allowing us to face challenges.
Then I am thy God.
Yeah.
That establishes his identity, his ultimate authority. It's a reminder of who is actually in control of everything, seen and unseen.
That's the ultimate reality check, isn't it? Understanding that brings such a profound sense of security. It allows us to release that burden of feeling like we have to control everything. And that release is a major victory.
It is. And then, I will strengthen thee. Yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee. This points to his active, continuous, dynamic support.
It's not passive comfort, not just a pat on the back.
No. It's a promise of direct divine intervention and sustenance, ensuring that even when we feel weakest, we're supernaturally sustained. And that leads to surprising breakthroughs in our capacity to endure and overcome.
Sustenance, yeah. Holding you up. It's really an invitation, isn't it, to surrender that frantic need for control?
Totally.
Recognizing that ultimate strength, ultimate capacity comes from a source infinitely greater than ourselves. It speaks directly to that idea of ultimate trust, which is the key to unlocking extraordinary liberation, unexpected gains.
And this momentous promise of God's presence, like we see in Isaiah, it just echoes all through these ancient texts, doesn't it? It's not isolated.
It's a really consistent theme. You see it with Moses reassuring the Israelites in Deuteronomy, telling them God actually goes with you into battle. Be strong and of a good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee.
The ultimate companion, indeed. And the direct promise of protection from enemies. Again, Deuteronomy 3.22, the Lord himself will fight for you. It feels like this comprehensive blanket of assurance covering all sorts of external threats, promising genuine triumph and safety.
It really does. And then for those very real, often crippling inner anxieties, Paul offers a pathway in Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7.
Right. Be careful for nothing, which means don't be anxious about anything,
Yep.
but in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God.
That's the instruction, and then the promise that follows.
And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus.
And that phrase, the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, that's truly pivotal, isn't it? It signifies a serenity that isn't dependent on our logical grasp of things.
Right. It's not contingent on all the variables lining up neatly or making sense to us. It's a profound internal shift, a mental and emotional triumph regardless of circumstance.
Exactly. So it's beyond reason. It transcends human logic. It's an inner calm that can hold your heart and mind steady even when external circumstances are screaming chaos and despair.
That internal stability is an invaluable, unanticipated benefit. It allows us to think clearly when the world feels tumultuous.
Right. When everything around you is just, screaming panic.
Precisely. And this speaks directly to the core of our deep dive today. That fundamental importance of cultivating ultimate trust, even when our understanding is limited, when the whole picture is far from clear.
Which it often is.
Yeah. It's an invitation to surrender that relentless human need to grasp every detail, and instead to rest in the knowledge that God's presence and his meticulous care are fundamentally sufficient, that he understands even if we don't. And that kind of rest is a significant triumph over anxiety's constant demands.
Resting in that sufficiency, that really is a game changer. And what's particularly fascinating, I think, is how Jesus not only commands fear not, but also powerfully demonstrates this truth through his compassionate teachings and actions. He used these really relatable analogies sometimes.
Yes, that illustrate the radical, almost unbelievable extent of God's care, like the sparrows. I always find that example so incredibly compelling for its simplicity and depth.
It's a beautiful illustration. Matthew 10 and Luke 12 both have it. Are not two sparrows sold for a farthing, and one of them shall not fall on the ground without your Father?
Such tiny creatures, right?
Yeah.
Seemingly insignificant. But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear ye not, therefore, ye are of more value than many sparrows. It's just such a simple yet profound image.
The level of detail in the care described is astounding. If an all-knowing God pays such close, meticulous attention to even the tiny details of creation, a single sparrow falling,
Yeah, the implication is huge.
then how much more does he value and care for you, who the text says is made in his image? This places an immeasurable value on human life. It invites us to walk in a new confidence, a freedom from anxieties about insignificance. That understanding itself is a gain.
It truly highlights this concept of radical, meticulous care. This isn't just general oversight. It's presented as intimate, detailed awareness. And this understanding connects directly to trusting God's providence, trusting his understanding beyond our own, which leads to unexpected peace, even in the mundane.
Because his understanding is so vast, covering everything.
Precisely. If he cares about the number of hairs on your head, it speaks volumes about an intricate personal involvement in your life. Then you consider Mark chapter 5, verse 36. Jesus tells Jairus, who's just received the devastating news his daughter is dead.
The ultimate fear for many, right there, losing a child.
Exactly. And Jesus tells him, be not afraid, only believe. Right there, in the face of death itself, he asserts his divine power over even death, offering faith as the direct antidote to perhaps the most profound human fear. The triumph over death, literal or figurative, is the ultimate manifestation of his power activated by our trust.
Only believe. Such simple words, yet so demanding in that context of unimaginable grief. What a challenge to face.
And his words in John 14:27 are just so comforting, especially when you're feeling deep anxiety or overwhelmed. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you. Not as the world giveth, give I unto you. He makes that distinction crystal clear.
Yeah, that difference is key.
Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. He specifically differentiates his peace from worldly peace, which, let's be honest, is often fleeting, conditional, dependent on everything going right externally.
Yeah, that circumstantial peace is so unreliable. Things change constantly.
His peace, by contrast, is presented as something deeper, more enduring, internally generated, and crucially, not contingent on what's happening around us. That's the peace that passes understanding. A profound triumph over chaotic circumstance.
Very likely connected, yes. And then there's also Matthew 10:28, which introduces a different but equally vital nuance of fear.
Right, the fear him part. And fear not them which kill the body but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell.
Okay, clarify that. How is this different from the crippling fear we're told to avoid?
Well, this isn't about being terrified of God in a tormenting way, which we've been discussing as something to overcome. It's about understanding there's a specific reverence, a profound awe, maybe reverent awe is a better term.
Yeah.
It acknowledges his ultimate authority and power over everything, physical life, eternal destiny included. It's a reorientation of our fear towards what is truly ultimate, rather than fearing temporary threats. This reorientation itself provides profound clarity, unexpected wisdom, allowing us to prioritize correctly.
So fearing the right thing in a way, awe and respect for the ultimate reality, not temporary powers.
Precisely. It puts human concerns into such stark, almost humbling perspective. And remember that dramatic scene in Mark 6? Jesus walking on water towards the terrified disciples who thought he was a ghost.
Yeah, in the middle of the storm again. They're always in storms, it seems.
Oh, seems like it. And his immediate response, "Be of good cheer, it is I. Be not afraid." He directly addresses their terror with his reassuring presence. It is I.
His very presence is the antidote.
Yes, the simple recognition of him banished their overwhelming terror, turning fear into peace almost instantly, a clear victory over panic.
Absolutely. Each of these examples, they just serve to underscore the same profound truth. If God cares for sparrows, numbers the hairs on your head, has authority over death itself, how much more does he care for you? It shifts everything.
It really does.
This level of meticulous, personalized care is a direct invitation to trust. His understanding, his providence, even when we can't see the whole picture. It suggests our value to him is immeasurable, which should render many of our earthly fears, those rooted in the transient, the finite, ultimately unnecessary, or at least secondary. And that opens the door for remarkable inner calm, stability, real gains in perspective.
It provides the foundation. This foundational understanding of divine care is the bedrock upon which genuine, unwavering faith is built. It's the why behind the trust, enabling us to face challenges with confidence, knowing we are truly valued, and setting us up for victory.
And this pervasive message, fear not, it isn't just confined to direct words from God or Jesus, is it? It seems to permeate other significant divine interactions too. We see it conveyed by other individuals, even by angels.
That's right. It's a consistent message delivered through various agents. Consider Moses. He was, understandably, deeply fearful about leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Huge responsibility facing Pharaoh, leading a massive enslaved population.
Immense pressure, a truly daunting task for anyone. He must have felt completely inadequate.
Oh, I'm sure. And he's repeatedly encouraged by God not to be afraid, reminded again and again of God's unwavering presence and power. Like in Deuteronomy 31, his very human apprehension is met consistently with divine reassurance. And that reassurance equipped him for monumental historic triumphs. This wasn't just comfort, it was enablement.
Yes. And then his successor, Joshua, tasked with the immense challenge of leading the people into the promised land after Moses. Another daunting task, stepping into those huge shoes.
Absolutely huge. And he receives similar powerful commands. Joshua 1.9 is just this resounding affirmation. Have not I commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest.
Whithersoever thou goest, everywhere. That is the ultimate reassurance, isn't it? Total coverage.
That passage truly underscores the vital importance of courage. When you're stepping into leadership, or facing new, intimidating challenges, or just embarking on an unknown path, the knowledge of God's omnipresent, active companionship is presented as the ultimate assurance against any fear that might arise. It's the blueprint for genuine success, for achieving victory in new endeavors.
And then you have the angels. Some of the most iconic angelic messages in history start with "Fear not." It's often the very first thing they say, isn't it? Like a standard greeting from the divine realm.
It is, yeah. Luke 1:30, the angel Gabriel to Mary, "Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God." Delivering this profoundly life-altering, world-changing news about Jesus' birth.
An overwhelming moment, surely. How do you respond to that kind of news without being completely floored by fear or confusion?
Exactly. And later, Luke 2:10, the angel to the bewildered shepherds out in the fields, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people." Again, fear not leads the announcement of this incredible gain for humanity.
Right, moments of great upheaval or divine calling.
So the fear not here isn't just a simple comfort. It's almost presented as a prerequisite for receiving or acting upon the divine will. It's like the essential permission slip, the necessary internal shift needed to step into something truly remarkable that would otherwise be completely overwhelming or simply unbelievable.
Clearing the way for faith to operate.
Exactly. This mental and spiritual preparation ensures the reception of blessings and the ability to achieve God's purposes. It transforms apprehension into readiness, allowing for profound personal and collective liberation. It powerfully reinforces the idea that when God is about to do something momentous, something that will disrupt human understanding, he first addresses that natural human tendency towards fear. He clears the way, makes space for faith to take root and flourish. It's a foundational step. Now, this brings us to a really important nuance, and it's one that can definitely be a source of confusion for people.
Okay. We've talked a lot about the command "fear not" in the context of anxiety, terror, general human apprehension. But as you know, the Bible also frequently talks about the fear of the Lord, right? Which sounds, well, fearful. How do we reconcile those two?
They seem contradictory on the surface.
Yeah. For some, that phrase "fear of the Lord" can sound quite intimidating, even terrifying, like something to avoid, not embrace.
It can, and that's understandable, but it's a crucial distinction we need to make. So it's not about being scared of God in the same way you'd be scared of, say, a dangerous animal or a threatening situation. No, not in that sense.
Okay.
While the Bible speaks so strongly against fear as terror or crippling anxiety, it clearly emphasizes the fear of the Lord as something positive, a source of profound wisdom and a deep reverence for God's holiness, His majesty, His power. This understanding itself is an unexpected insight, a gateway to true knowledge, a real gain.
So reverence, awe, not paralyzing dread. That's a key distinction.
Not paralyzing dread at all. This fear of the Lord is fundamentally different. It's not about being afraid of God's wrath in a way that brings torment. Rather, it's a profound sense of respect, awe, and humble submission to His perfect holiness, His immense power, His flawless character.
An acknowledgement of who he is in his full scope and majesty. His otherness, maybe.
Exactly, an acknowledgement of His ultimate supreme authority and goodness. And this type of fear, paradoxically perhaps, is precisely what leads to true wisdom and deep understanding. Proverbs 9:10 tells us, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding."
The beginning of wisdom. So it's foundational, like a starting point for all true understanding, a necessary first step for that gain.
Foundational. It's a recognition of God's rightful place and our place in relation to Him. And here's a crucial connection. This reverence for God's character is precisely what fuels the profound trust needed to overcome all those other lesser worldly fears.
Ah, okay. So the good fear drives out the bad fear. That's a powerful concept. Healthy reverence, conquering unhealthy dread. That reverence becomes a source of victory.
In a way, yes. It means understanding God's ultimate authority and goodness so deeply that you can trust Him, even when His ways are completely beyond our full comprehension, which ties directly back to our mission today. Understanding ultimate trust, trusting even without full understanding.
Right.
It's the kind of fear or awe that paradoxically grounds us, frees us from superficial anxieties by comparison, and allows us to rest secure in His sovereignty no matter what. It's the ultimate good fear, the fear that leads to life and peace, which are incredible, lasting benefits.
Okay, so if fear not is such a central, pervasive command in these biblical narratives, it really forces us to ask, what exactly is this fear that we're being told repeatedly to cast off? What's its inherent nature? And why is it depicted as such a significant barrier to the kind of flourishing life, the victories the texts describe? What does it actually do to us?
That's the right question. Fear in this context is consistently depicted as a major deterrent, a force that actively hinders our spiritual progress, our personal flourishing, our potential gains. Fundamentally, it seems often rooted in self-trust, or perhaps more accurately, A misplaced trust.
Misplaced trust, meaning relying on ourselves or other limited things instead of something greater, like putting faith in the wrong place.
Exactly. Trusting in our own human capabilities or worldly power structures or even just our own limited understanding rather than placing that ultimate trust in God. When we operate out of fear, we're kind of making an unconscious declaration, aren't we?
Like what?
That's like saying, I don't believe God is big enough or present enough or caring enough to handle this specific situation. So I must rely on my own finite abilities or I'll put my hope in some other external, equally finite force. And this misplaced trust inherently prevents positive outcomes. It blocks our path to true liberty and gain.
That's the essence of misplaced trust right there. Shifting reliance from the infinite to the temporary. It sounds like it just sets us up for disappointment, maybe even failure.
It does. So it's not just an emotion we feel. It's more like a misplaced allegiance, a doubt that causes us to question God's promises, his presence, his power. And that leads to a loss of potential benefits, a spiraling sense of insecurity.
Yes. And that doubt leads us to depend on our own limited strategies, our own strength, or other external forces that are, at the end of the day, fleeting and ultimately undependable. It keeps us trapped in a state of self-reliance, which is inherently vulnerable because we are finite.
We are definitely finite.
And this vulnerability stops us from achieving true breakthroughs. It keeps us stuck, preventing those victories.
Precisely. Consider Proverbs 29:25. The fear of man bringeth a snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord shall be safe.
A snare, like a trap. So the fear of man is the trap, worrying what others think or can do.
Exactly. This verse explicitly links the fear of man, which really represents that external limited trust in human approval, opinions, or power to danger, a trap. And it directly contrasts that with trust in the Lord, which promises safety, security, and enduring sense of calm. It's a very clear warning about where you place your confidence, indicating that profound security is an unanticipated benefit, a real gain when trust is placed correctly.
Don't fear people. Fear the snare that comes from fearing people. That's a crucial distinction. It reframes the danger.
Right. Or take Isaiah 51:1. I, even I, am he that comforteth you. Who art thou, that thou shouldest be afraid of a man that shall die, and of the son of man which shall be made as grass?
Wow, that really cuts deep. Made as grass. Like a humbling, almost dismissive comparison for human power.
It profoundly contrasts the transient, temporary nature of humans, literally likened to grass that withers and fades, with the eternal, unchanging, all-sufficient nature of God. It highlights the sheer folly, almost the absurdity, of fearing mortals who are themselves finite and vulnerable over the Almighty who is eternal and sovereign. Fearing mortals leads to a loss of proper perspective, hindering our capacity to achieve true freedom and inner peace.
Yeah. Why should you fear something as temporary as grass when you have the option, the invitation to trust the eternal rock? It reframes the whole perspective completely. It puts things in the proper place.
It really does. That perspective shift is a game. It reminds me of Jeremiah 10, talking about idols, verses 3-5.
Ah, yes, the warnings against idolatry, where it says, "Be not afraid of them, the idols, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. They're powerless."
A powerful analogy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really serves as a powerful analogy for any misplaced trust we might put in things without true inherent power, whether they're literal statues or maybe the intangible anxieties and fears that we allow to rule over us.
Like we give them authority they don't possess.
Exactly. Giving them an authority they simply don't possess. This surrender to intangible fears prevents us from seizing true opportunities and living an abundant life, achieving those potential gains.
Letting fear become an idol in itself, that's a chilling thought because we give it power it doesn't actually have, and it blocks the path to victory.
Yes, allowing it to dictate our choices instead of faith. So for you listening right now, what are you fearing that might be holding you back? And maybe more deeply, does that fear point to where your trust is currently placed?
Yeah, what are you really relying on?
Are you relying on your own capabilities, your bank account, your status, worldly systems, things that are ultimately transient? Or are you learning to place that trust somewhere transcendent, truly eternal? It's a challenging question, but answering it honestly can lead to profound self-discovery and the reclaiming of lost potential, genuine peace, real benefits.
A very important one to ask ourselves regularly. And if we connect this idea of misplaced trust back to the broader narrative tapestry of these sources, the Bible gives us some very clear and often quite stark examples of what happens when fear is allowed to override faith, the negative consequences.
It doesn't just describe fear as an internal state. It shows the tangible, often negative consequences when we choose fear. The accounts frequently question the disciples' faith, for instance, when they succumb to fear. and they present significant repercussions for a lack of genuine trust.
It vividly demonstrates the serious implications of giving into that emotion, right? And how it means missing out on divine intervention, profound blessings, those potential
You
gains.
see it so clearly, almost viscerally, with the disciples during that terrifying storm on the Sea of Galilee we mentioned earlier.
Classic example. Yeah.
In Matthew 8 and Mark 4, Jesus finds them panicking, and he asks them almost with a sense of disappointment. It feels like, "Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? And why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith?"
The questions themselves are revealing, like, where's your trust? It implies a choice they failed to make, a victory they forfeited through fear.
His questions directly implied that their fear is a symptom, a visible sign of insufficient faith, a failure to truly rely on his presence and power right there with them. Their fear prevented them from experiencing a peaceful outcome, even with Christ physically in their boat. They missed the immediate gain of peace.
That contrast is just so palpable. The chaos of the storm, the disciples' absolute terror, and then Jesus' serene authority calmly rebuking the wind and waves. Their fear isn't just an emotion, it's an active expression of doubt, a failure to trust.
A failure to trust the ultimate power literally in the boat with them. That scene is such a profoundly powerful illustration. Their fear wasn't just a reaction, it was an active expression of doubt that denied them immediate relief and a profound sense of security. They missed out.
Then there's that iconic moment with Peter walking on water, Matthew 14.
It starts with faith, doesn't it? He initially steps out of the boat in this incredibly bold act of faith, responding directly to Jesus' invitation. Come. An amazing potential victory right there.
Amazing courage initially. He defies logic to step onto the waves. He's experiencing a miracle.
But then the text says, when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid. His focus shifted. He saw the waves. His perception got overwhelmed by the circumstances. He took his eyes off Jesus.
And started to doubt.
And the immediate consequence, he starts to sink. It perfectly illustrates fear as the direct antidote to faith in action. It derails even strong initial acts of faith and prevents the full triumph, the complete manifestation of the miraculous. He lost his footing, literally.
It really does. It's a vivid, immediate picture of shifting from trusting Jesus' word and invitation to trusting his own limited perception of the overwhelming circumstances. And the negative consequence, sinking, is immediate. It highlights how quickly fear can derail even the strongest initial acts of faith, causing a loss of progress and a return to helplessness.
And it wasn't just Peter or the disciples collectively in the storm. Think about Thomas after the resurrection. His struggle with doubt in John 20.
Doubting Thomas, as he's often called.
Yeah, Jesus appears and tells him, "Be not faithless, but believing." Thomas famously requires physical proof, right? He needs to touch the wounds before he'll believe.
Yeah, he needed the tangible evidence. Very human desire for empirical proof, I suppose.
It showcases that very human tendency towards doubt, doesn't it? That reliance on what we can empirically verify, what we can see and touch, over belief without it. A reluctance to trust beyond the immediately perceptible. And that reluctance delayed his experience of the full truth and joy, the profound reality and victory of the resurrection.
A very relatable struggle, I think, for many of us. And we also see historical collective consequences of this on a much larger scale. The story of the Israelites in the wilderness.
Well, that's a monumental one. As vividly described in Hebrews 3, for example, their unbelief, their collective lack of faith, their subsequent disobedience, despite witnessing countless miracles, daily provision.
Manna from heaven, water from a rock, divine intervention at every turn, signs and wonders constantly.
Right. Despite all that evidence, their unbelief prevented an entire generation from entering the promised land. The text says it starkly in Hebrews 3.19. So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief.
Because of unbelief. So a lack of faith driven by fear of the giants in the land literally denied them access to their promised future, their inheritance, the ultimate gain.
It's a stark historical example of the consequence of fear and unbelief. Being denied access to God's promises and blessings, a literal inability to inherit what was already prepared for them, all because of a failure to trust. It's a massive cautionary tale showing the immense losses incurred when fear dictates the path instead of faith leading to victory.
Written large across their history, a warning for all generations. And Jesus himself, during his earthly ministry, he laments over the unbelieving cities. Chorazin, Bethsaida, Capernaum. You read about it in Matthew 11 and Luke 10.
Cities where he performed mighty works, amazing miracles. Exactly. Despite witnessing his powerful actions firsthand, their collective lack of faith Their refusal to repent and believe led to profound spiritual ruin.
He warned them their judgment would be more severe, right?
Yes, more severe than even notoriously wicked cities like Tyre and Sidon, precisely because they had rejected the divine presence and power right there among them. They had the evidence but lacked the faith. And the result was profound loss, instead of the unanticipated blessings and victories they could have experienced.
These instances taken together, they really highlight a critical point. Fear isn't just a passive emotion that happens to us. It's often presented as an action, or perhaps more accurately, an inaction, a choice not to trust.
Yeah, an internal posture.
And that choice can actively prevent us from experiencing God's full promises and blessings. It determines our external reality in many ways.
It holds us back. It really does. It's often a failure to operate in that state of ultimate trust, which holds us back from receiving what has already been offered or from stepping into the destiny laid out for us. It leads not just to spiritual stagnation, but often to regression or retreat from divine purpose into self-imposed limitation, all driven by fear and all preventing potential triumphs and the abundant life offered.
Okay, so we've spent some time really examining what fear does to us, how it acts as the significant barrier, and how it often points to a misplaced trust, usually in ourselves or in temporary things. But now let's pivot. Let's focus on the alternative, the antidote. What is this faith we're called to embrace? This ultimate trust that the sources say consistently triumphs over fear, leading to significant liberation and unexpected advantages.
Right. What does it actually look like in practice? Well, faith, as it's profoundly presented in these sources, is far more than just, say, intellectual assent to a list of theological beliefs. It's not just head knowledge.
More than just checking boxes on a doctrine list, then.
Got it. Much more. It's described as a deep-seated, active, and truly transformative trust in God's unchanging character and his unfailing promises. It's a living confidence, a dynamic force.
Active and transformative. That implies a dynamic internal shift, something that changes us from the inside out.
Yes. And it involves a conscious, deliberate surrendering of control, a letting go of our own frantic attempts to manage and manipulate outcomes, and instead a profound reliance on God's guidance and provision. That surrender itself is often the first great triumph, freeing us from the crushing burden of self-reliance.
That surrender piece feels absolutely key, but it's hard. How do you practice that kind of letting go?
It is absolutely critical. And here's the part that connects directly to our focus today on gains and victories. It demands reliance even when human logic doesn't fully grasp a situation.
When it makes no sense to us.
Exactly. Or when his ways seem contradictory to us, counterintuitive, maybe even painful from our limited perspective. That's the hard part, isn't it? Trusting when it doesn't make sense. But it's precisely there, in that space of trusting beyond understanding, that the greatest benefits, the most profound breakthroughs are often found.
That is the essence of this ultimate trust in God, even if we don't understand it. It's the very heart of what we're digging into today.
Yeah.
It requires a willingness to acknowledge that our finite human minds cannot possibly comprehend the infinite mind of God. We just can't. Our bandwidth is too limited.
Yeah. Accepting that limitation is humbling, but absolutely necessary for this kind of faith. It means actively choosing to trust God's overarching plan, his intrinsic character, his goodness, his wisdom, his love beyond our unlimited immediate understanding. It's acknowledging that there's always more to learn, always a bigger picture we can't see.
That his ways are indeed higher than our ways, his thoughts higher than our thoughts, as Isaiah says. And embracing that yields the profound benefits of peace and spiritual insight, even amidst confusion.
It's a profound bedrock belief in his goodness and his sovereignty, even when circumstances are confusing or painful or seem utterly illogical from where we're standing. It's choosing to trust the orchestrator, even when the music sounds chaotic to us, knowing there's a symphony being created, a victory being planned.
That's a wonderful analogy.
Yeah.
And a foundational, perhaps one of the most challenging examples of this precise kind of faith is Abraham's faith in Genesis 22.
Oh yeah, the binding of Isaac. A deeply unsettling story for many. It challenges our modern sensibilities about God and parenting.
Deeply unsettling, profoundly challenging. God commanded Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, his only beloved son, the very child through whom God had promised to raise up a great nation, countless descendants, the child of promise.
A command that seemed to directly contradict God's own promises. Utterly contradictory from a human standpoint, defying all logic and parental instinct. Just brutal.
Yet Abraham's willingness to obey, his immediate and profound trust, stemmed from his deep conviction, his belief that God would absolutely fulfill his promises somehow, even if it seemed illogical.
Hebrews later suggest Abraham reasoned that God was able to raise Isaac even from the dead to keep his word. That's how deep his trust went.
That's trust beyond understanding, taken to the absolute extreme. It truly is radical, gut-wrenching obedience. But the outcome,
The incredible triumph there was not only Isaac's life being spared, but the strengthening of God's covenant with Abraham, leading to unimaginable future blessings for all nations. The victory was immense, far beyond just saving his son.
it wasn't a trust based on comfort or clarity or understanding the why. It was based purely on the character of the one giving the command. And that trust brought an extraordinary outcome, demonstrating God's faithfulness in a way that built an unshakable foundation for all future generations. That's a massive gain from an impossible situation.
Trust in the commander, not the command's logic. That's a powerful and counterintuitive principle.
Precisely. And the sources reinforce the central idea elsewhere, too. Hebrews 11.6 states it plainly. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him.
Impossible to please him without faith. That's strong language. It elevates faith to an indispensable prerequisite for a relationship with the divine, for experiencing his favor.
It clearly states that faith isn't just an option for having a relationship with God. It's the indispensable prerequisite. You must believe he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. This reward isn't just pie in the sky. It's presented as a life of divine favor, blessing, genuine purpose, tangible benefits here and now, victories along the way.
And John 6.29 adds another crucial dimension, doesn't it? About the nature of faith itself.
It does. Jesus says, "This is the work of God, that ye believe on him whom he hath sent." Belief or faith is presented here not merely as a passive state of mind, but as a fundamental work or action.
Yeah, almost the primary response God desires. And maybe even something he himself enables within us. This enabled belief allows for incredible benefits in spiritual understanding and empowerment, shifting us from striving to receiving his help and achieving his victories.
Believing is the work. Interesting. So for you listening, as you reflect on this, how does your typical understanding of trust stack up against this deep, surrendered faith that Abraham exemplified?
Where might you be, perhaps unknowingly holding on to control, constantly trying to figure everything out on your own, needing to grasp every single detail before you're willing to take a step forward in obedience or reliance? That relentless need to control can be absolutely exhausting, and it blocks so many potential gains.
And conversely, where can you choose today to let go, to truly relinquish that need for absolute certainty and simply trust in God's ultimate wisdom and goodness, even when the path ahead is entirely unclear?
What would it actually look like for you to lean into that fundamental truth right where you are and experience the inner freedom and unanticipated blessings, the real victories that come from it?
Big questions to ponder. And what's truly fascinating here as we continue is how active and inherently powerful faith is presented throughout these texts. It's definitely not a passive intellectual agreement sitting on a shelf somewhere, gathering dust.
No, it feels much more dynamic than that. It's depicted as a dynamic living force, a profound source of incredible strength, a real catalyst for action. And it's explicitly linked time and again to miraculous occurrences and the reception of divine blessings.
It's almost like a spiritual principle. Apply faith and things genuinely shift. Reality changes, often in miraculous ways, leading to direct triumphs and breakthroughs. Unexpected gains appear.
The mustard seed analogy from Matthew 17.20 illustrates that so powerfully, doesn't it? Jesus says that even a tiny amount of genuine faith, something as small and seemingly insignificant as a mustard seed,
The smallest of seeds, they knew, right? A symbol of something truly tiny.
it can move mountains. That highlights how even initial, seemingly insignificant faith, a tiny spark of trust, has immense transformative potential. Enough power to overcome seemingly impossible, immovable obstacles. This is a clear promise of profound triumph over impossibilities, a literal reordering of your world, a massive gain.
It's not about the quantity of your faith, is it? But the object of your faith, who you're trusting in. Even small faith in a great God has great power.
That's a crucial clarification. It's not about mustering up huge amounts of belief ourselves. It's about where we place that belief.
Exactly. Then there's that poignant story, the Canaanite woman in Matthew 15. Remember her?
Yes. Pleading persistently for her daughter, her story is quite striking and initially a bit confusing maybe.
Her persistent faith, despite Jesus' initial seeming reluctance to help her, and what looked like a rejection based on societal and ethnic lines at the time.
It seemed harsh at first, certainly. It felt like a test, perhaps, of her resolve, her willingness to trust despite appearances. It did. But her faith was starkly contrasted with the general lack of faith Jesus encountered elsewhere. And he ultimately commended her so highly, saying, "O woman, great is thy faith, be it unto thee even as thou wilt."
Great is thy faith. He didn't just heal her daughter. He affirmed her deep confidence, her persistent trust.
And her steadfast trust resulted in the profound benefit of her daughter's healing, demonstrating the power of unyielding trust. This truly highlights the power of steadfast, persevering trust, even when circumstances or initial appearances seem entirely against your hopes. It's about not giving up on that ultimate trust, even when it's severely tested. Because perseverance often leads to unexpected breakthroughs and the manifestation of divine favor, the eventual victory.
And while the sources consistently affirm that salvation is by grace through faith alone, not by works, the book of James, particularly in chapter 2, clarifies something important about faith's nature, doesn't it?
Yeah, the faith and works discussion, a frequent point of theological debate or sometimes confusion.
Right. James argues forcefully that faith without corresponding actions is considered incomplete or dead.
Yeah, genuine, living faith will naturally, inevitably produce good works as a consequence, as visible evidence of its reality. These good works are tangible outcomes, demonstrating the transformative power of faith in action. They're a clear sign of an inner shift, a benefit flowing outward.
So works don't save you, but they show your faith is real. They're the fruit of genuine trust, not the root that earns salvation.
That's the idea James presents. It dispels the notion of a purely passive, inert faith. It powerfully connects trust to active, obedient living. True faith isn't just internal, it inevitably manifests externally in how you live, leading to positive contributions and impact on the world around you, another form of gain.
We also see this direct correlation between faith being the antidote to fear articulated so beautifully in some of the songs, like Psalm 56.3 to 4.
A wonderful passage for anyone battling anxiety right now. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. In God I will praise his word. In God I put my trust. I will not fear what flesh can do unto me.
It's an immediate, conscious pivot described right there, from the feeling of fear to the deliberate act of trusting. A choice.
A conscious choice, an action. This deliberate choice leads directly to inner courage and outward confidence, a clear victory over intimidation. It shows a profound internal resilience being cultivated.
And Psalm 27.1 echoes this almost like a bold declaration or even a challenge. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?
Rhetorical questions with obvious answers for the psalmist. He's found his source of strength, so fear has no ultimate grip on him. The Lord is his victory.
It shows faith not just as a source of passive comfort, but as the very wellspring of active courage, enabling one to face any adversary or challenge without being consumed by dread. It's clear then, when you look at all these examples, that faith is presented not merely as a belief system to be intellectually affirmed, but as this dynamic, active, and profoundly transformative force.
It actually does things. It changes you and changes your circumstances. It produces victories.
It enables individuals to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles, to endure hardship with hope, and even to experience divine intervention. It's fundamentally about confidently relying on God's character and his infallible promises, regardless of the perceived impossibilities or the lack of clarity on the path ahead.
This confident reliance is the engine of true triumph and profound inner peace, the source of unexpected gains.
And that unwavering reliance is precisely what allows us to step out of the paralysis of fear and into purposeful, empowered action. Trusting even when we don't fully understand, that's the path to victory.
Exactly. It doesn't necessarily mean the problem vanishes instantly, but your internal response to it, your posture towards it, fundamentally changes.
Yeah.
You're no longer controlled by the fear of it. It's okay, if this kind of transformative faith is so vital, so central to overcoming fear and living this life of profound trust that the text describe,
Sure.
is it something we just conjure up?
Yeah, how do we get this faith? Is it entirely our effort, something we drum up on our own through sheer willpower? That sounds exhausting.
Or is there maybe a deeper, perhaps more mysterious dimension to how we cultivate it? Is generating this deep trust entirely within our own power? That's a truly critical dimension that the sources absolutely address. And it adds this incredible layer of grace, I think, to the whole discussion. A massive relief, actually.
Grace. That changes the dynamic completely, doesn't it? It takes the burden off us.
It does. The Bible consistently presents faith not just as a human choice or effort, though our responses are definitely involved, but also fundamentally as a profound gift from God.
A gift. Ephesians 2.8 articulates this perhaps most beautifully and famously. For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God.
Not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. That's remarkably clear. It highlights our dependence on God, not only for the outcome salvation,
Mhm.
but crucially for the very means, the capacity and ability to believe, to cultivate this ultimate trust in the first place.
Hmm.
It strongly implies that God initiates, enables, and even sustains this trust within us. It's a divine impartation, not just a human achievement. This divine enablement is the ultimate foundation for all triumphs over fear, the ultimate unexpected gain.
Wow. That's incredibly significant, isn't it? It means we don't have to somehow manufacture belief out of thin air. It connects back to that idea we touched on earlier about receiving special revelations or insights, maybe.
How so? Explain that connection.
Well, it suggests that even our capacity to trust God through what we don't fully understand, or when the answers aren't immediately clear, that very ability to bridge the gap between our limited sight and His infinite plan, is itself a divinely enabled capacity, a gift.
Yeah, it's not just a self-help strategy or positive thinking.
Right. It's not something we can simply generate through sheer force of will or intellectual effort alone.
It seems to be presented as a form of divine empowerment, leading to unforeseen advantages in our spiritual life and a profound sense of inner peace and resilience.
Exactly. And if faith is indeed at its root a gift, how does that transform your perspective of your approach to cultivating it? Does it change how you seek it? How you pursue victory over fear?
Well, it takes the pressure off, doesn't it? It fundamentally shifts the burden from a demanding, potentially exhausting self-effort.
Mm.
I must believe harder. I must generate more faith. To a humble reliance on grace, a willingness to simply receive.
Open hands rather than clenched fists trying to create it.
That's beautifully put. A posture of reception.
Precisely. It means we can actively ask for faith. We can seek environments and practices that nurture it, community, prayer, scripture, and we can be open to its divine impartation, understanding that God is the ultimate source, not just the object of our faith.
He gives the very faith we need to trust him.
Yes, allowing us to achieve breakthroughs, to experience victories that would otherwise be impossible through human effort alone. This perspective allows for a deep humility in our pursuit of trust, knowing that He enables us to believe what is beyond our complete grasp, bridging that inevitable chasm between our limited understanding and His infinite wisdom. It's presented as a profound act of divine benevolence, God providing us with the very means to overcome our inherent fears and connect with Him, securing the ultimate gain. So this brings us right to the fundamental connection, doesn't it? The essential interplay between these two powerful forces we've been exploring, faith and fear. How do they truly interact on a practical, moment-by-moment level in our lives? What is their actual relationship according to these sources?
They're consistently presented as mutually exclusive, aren't they? It's almost like they cannot occupy the same heart space, the same mind space at the same time. Oil and water.
Mutually exclusive. That's a powerful way to put it. One displaces the other. You choose which one gets the space.
The presence of one fundamentally diminishes the power of the other. This dynamic is perhaps most powerfully articulated in 1 John 4.18. That verse feels like a cornerstone for understanding their opposition.
Read it for us. It's so direct and impactful.
There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love.
Perfect love casteth out fear. That is profound. It directly links love, which is foundational to God's very character and therefore absolutely central to our faith in Him, to the active expulsion of fear. It's an active, transformative force. Love wins the victory over fear.
Casteth out, like throwing something out of the house, like an unwelcome intruder.
Exactly.
And notice, it identifies fear not just as an unpleasant emotion, but as bringing torment.
Yeah, torment is a strong word.
It highlights its destructive, oppressive, truly debilitating nature. This isn't just feeling uncomfortable. The text calls it torment, a form of spiritual suffering, a state of agitation and inner turmoil. The triumph here is freedom from this torment, this inner suffering. That freedom is a massive gain.
Yeah, it captures that crippling effect fear can have, that internal anguish it creates, robbing us of peace.
Similarly, 2 Timothy 1.7 is remarkably direct and clarifying. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind.
Not given us a spirit of fear, so it doesn't originate from Him. That completely redefines where fear comes from for a believer. It's an alien spirit.
Unequivocally. It contrasts the spirit of fear, which the sources often associate with a kind of spiritual bondage or an internal stronghold, with the spirit given by God. And what does that spirit look like? Power, love, and a sound mind, or self-control, discipline, clarity.
Power, love, sound mind. Those are the complete opposite of fear's effects, aren't they?
Totally. Fear paralyzes, God empowers. Fear isolates, God loves.
Mm.
Fear confuses and agitates, God brings a sound mind, clarity.
Mm.
These are all incredible benefits, direct outcomes, victories won when embracing faith and living in alignment with God's true nature.
It states in no uncertain terms that fear, at least this crippling kind, this tormenting kind, is not something that originates from God. It's an intruder. And it speaks directly to freedom, too, doesn't it? Romans 8:15 states it so emphatically. For ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear.
Bondage again, implying that's what we were freed from. It suggests a liberation from a previous state of being enslaved by fear.
Right. This implies fear is indeed a form of bondage, a restrictive, confining force that keeps us captive, maybe captive to circumstance or worry or other people's opinions. While genuine faith in God leads to adoption, sonship, and freedom, a profound liberation from that constricting grip. This liberation is a fundamental triumph, a profound advantage in our human experience, allowing us to live unencumbered, ready for new gains.
It's a radical transformative exchange then, moving from the slavery of fear to the liberty and inner strength of faith and love.
The ultimate antidote to fear, then, seems to be that complete, surrendered trust and the transformative love that is found in and flows from God. It's not just a comforting thought. It's presented as a radical, liberating reality we can step into, leading to a life marked by unanticipated freedom and a genuine, lasting peace. The ultimate victory.
So, okay, the big question then for you listening right now, after exploring all these profound insights, how do we actually do this? How do we make that shift practically from yielding to fear to embracing faith in our daily lives, especially when anxiety inevitably creeps in? Because let's be real, it does. Life happens.
Life throws challenges at us constantly. How do we apply this ancient wisdom in our modern world day to day?
Well, the good news is the fear not passages themselves and the overarching emphasis on faith we've discussed, they offer remarkably practical guidance. It seems to boil down to consciously, deliberately focusing on God's unchanging character, his unwavering promises, and his ever-present reality. Instead of letting the fear-inducing circumstances fill our entire field of vision, dominate our thoughts. This conscious shift is the practical step towards gaining triumph over daily anxieties. It's where the rubber meets the road.
Shifting the focus consciously, it sounds like it's about remembering his presence with you through the difficult times. Not necessarily promising you'll avoid them altogether. It's about companionship in the challenge, a divine ally bringing strength for the victory.
Exactly. That's a key distinction. Take Psalm 23.4, probably one of the most beloved passages offering comfort. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.
He doesn't say, I'll airlift you out of the valley so you never have to experience it. He says, though I walk through the valley, the journey is still there.
No. He says, though I walk through it, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. The comfort, the victory over fear, comes from his presence in the valley, the assurance of his guidance and protection during the darkest moments. That presence is the game changer, allowing us to find peace even amidst turmoil, a truly unexpected benefit and source of inner resilience.
That presence is the game changer. Or consider Psalm 34.4. I sought the Lord, and he heard me and delivered me from all my fears.
Notice the action there. I sought the Lord. Active seeking leading into deliverance. It's a dynamic relationship. Seeking him directly leads to specific relief from fear, a profound sense of liberation. The triumph here is the deliverance from fear itself, a tangible weight lifted, a clear gain.
And perhaps one of the most simple yet profoundly challenging instructions for truly releasing anxiety, for handing it over, is found in 1 Peter 5.7, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you.
Casting, like actively throwing it onto him, not just passively hoping it goes away, but a deliberate act of transfer.
It's a direct invitation to offload the burden, isn't it? To lean fully into God's ultimate and personal care, acknowledging that you don't have to carry the weight of the world, or even just your world, alone, because he cares for you.
The reason is given right there. His care is the foundation for our casting. This act of casting our cares is a practical step towards gaining profound internal freedom and clarity, a victory over worry.
The reason is his care, simple yet so profound in its implication for our trust.
And Luke 12.32 adds another layer, reinforcing this divine benevolence, God's intention towards us. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom.
His good pleasure to give us the kingdom. Wow, that connects our trust not just to his immense power, but to his inherent goodness, his desire to bless us, his fatherly heart. The kingdom here represents the ultimate benefit, right? A life of abundance, purpose, divine reign in our lives, the ultimate gain.
These aren't just abstract theological concepts. They are presented as action points for living, for navigating the anxieties of real life, and for securing tangible triumphs. They're a roadmap to a liberated existence, full of unexpected gains.
It really sounds then like it comes down to a conscious, deliberate choice we have to make, maybe moment by moment some days, sometimes minute by minute.
Definitely.
A choice to shift our focus away from the overwhelming circumstances or our own internal anxieties, which can feel so incredibly consuming, and towards God's unchanging nature and his utterly reliable promises.
Active reliance, not passive hope or just wishful thinking. It requires intentionality, discipline even. So to really extrapolate on this for everyone listening, consider what it truly means to live by these principles, not just agree with them intellectually, but embody them day in and day out.
How might this fundamental shift in focus, this commitment to ultimate trust, radically transform your reactions?
Yeah, your reactions to daily setbacks, to frustrations, to difficult people, to the often alarming news cycle, or maybe to those deeply personal challenges that seem to shake your very foundation.
What would it truly look like, feel like for you to embody that ultimate trust, to step into that profound freedom from fear even, and perhaps especially, when you don't have all the answers and the future remains stubbornly opaque? This transformation of reaction and experience is the profound liberation, the victory we're discussing.
That's the real challenge, isn't it? Living it out when things are uncertain, when clarity is elusive.
Well, today we've taken a truly comprehensive deep dive, haven't we, into these core human experiences of faith and fear. We've drawn out some timeless wisdom and hopefully some practical insights from the King James Bible's perspective on achieving victory through faith.
We really covered a lot of ground. We explored that pervasive command to fear not, understanding it not just as a simple injunction, but as an invitation to cultivate a deeper, more resilient internal state of courage, one that's profoundly rooted in divine assurance and presence. This cultivation itself is an unexpected triumph, a testament to inner transformation.
And we saw how fear consistently functions as a major deterrent in these narratives, often serving as a clear sign of self-trust or, more accurately, misplaced trust in finite powers, which inevitably leads to negative consequences and can actively hinder our access to promised blessings and a life of true spiritual flourishing, preventing potential gains.
These are the profound losses we aim to avoid, the freedom we seek to attain. And crucially, we unpacked faith as the ultimate transformative antidote to fear. We saw it's far more than just intellectual agreement. It's presented as a deep, active, surrendered trust in God's unchanging character and his infallible promises. It's a living, breathing confidence that leads to victory.
A trust that involves consciously letting go of our insistent need for complete understanding, releasing that tight grip, and instead relying fully on his guidance and provision, even when human logic doesn't fully grasp it, or maybe even rebels against it.
This letting go brings an unanticipated freedom and clarity of purpose, a significant gain. That ultimate trust, it fundamentally empowers us, allows us to act with courage even when faced with uncertainty. And remarkably, it's even presented as a divine gift. We can receive the ultimate foundational benefit that enables all other forms of progress and victory.
So, as we conclude this deep dive, perhaps here's a final provocative thought for you to ponder, something that builds on everything we've explored today and invites further personal reflection.
Okay, leave us with something significant to chew on.
We've seen that faith is described as an ultimate trust required even when we don't fully understand God's ways, precisely because our human understanding is inherently and profoundly limited. We just don't see the whole picture, do we?
Right. Our perspective is so narrow in comparison. We see through a glass darkly, as Paul says elsewhere.
The sources strongly suggest that true faith isn't about possessing all the answers or solving every mystery or maintaining control over every outcome. Rather, it's about fully trusting the one who does possess all understanding, the one who is in control.
Trusting the knower, not needing to be the knower ourselves, that's a radical shift of responsibility and incredibly freeing.
Exactly. So consider this. What if the greatest act of courage in your life isn't necessarily about gritting your teeth and facing what you fear head on with your own finite strength, or forcing yourself to somehow comprehend the incomprehensible?
What if it's something entirely different, something less intuitive, maybe even feels passive, but is deeply active trust?
What if instead the greatest courage lies in simply, profoundly letting go of your need to understand everything? Releasing that relentless, often exhausting grip on certainty, and choosing instead to rest.
To deeply rest in the radical, liberating reality that you are known. You are valued more than many sparrows, and you are held securely by an infinite, unchanging love, even and especially in the midst of the unknown. That profound rest, that deep security, is perhaps the greatest triumph and most unexpected benefit available to us all.
Letting go of the need to know and resting in being known and valued, that's definitely something to reflect on deeply as we navigate the uncertainties of life, pursuing faith over fear.